Good news, everyone. Patrick here from Evil Genius Zero on YouTube and Facebook, and we are here for episode 2 of our Lost Club. Ooh. Alright, so this episode is going to cover with full spoilers for all the episodes of Lost up to Season 1, Episode 6. So I know that I was a little unclear about 3 or 4 episodes. I would expect the next episode to also be about 4 episodes long, because, I don't want to, go too deep into, exactly everything that happened within these episodes. I want you to watch the TV show for that, and then, we'll go in and talk about things that are interesting. I did a character introduction for most of the characters in the previous video, so I'm going to skip that. I'm going to assume that you know who everyone is, right? One thing I didn't talk about in the previous episode that I realized later and wish I had was the flashbacks. So there were actually three separate flashbacks. One was following Jack in the airplane, the other one was kind of following Charlie in the airplane, and then the third one was following actually Kate. Also on the airplane. Hers was kind of at the end of the episode, and was to basically, show you that she was the prisoner on board. Before that, we learned that Charlie is a heroin addict through his flashback, and Jack just had a nice, polite little interaction with Rose. That's pretty much it. Pretty much it for Jack. So it was so in the pilot, the flashbacks are different than they are in the regular series, it seems like. So each episode focuses on one person, and they use the flashbacks clearly to kind of show A, how they got there, or B, where their mindset is, kind of. Just, so maybe they're giving the backstory, but they're also kind of giving you a person's mindset of where they are. So the first flashback is in Tabula Rosa, which means blank slate. And it focuses on Kate. And so it really just shows her fleeing captivity in Australia. And, she gets betrayed by the guy who was protecting her, or not protecting her, but she was living on the farm with the guy, and he betrays her. I did think I noticed that for whatever reason, the cars were on the incorrect side of the road for Australia. It seemed like they were driving on the right-hand side of the road, but they should have been on the left, and I think that was just to facilitate the marshal being able to pull up beside Kate and kind of taunt her. But otherwise, they would have been on the left-hand side of the road, which he wouldn't have really been able to do that the same way. It's just a weird continuity thing or whatever. Not a big problem with the show, but I noticed it and I thought it was funny, and I never, I hadn't noticed it the first time I watched it, I don't think. The second episode is, the fourth episode is called Walkabout, and it focuses on John Locke, who I think only gets introduced as a named character in this episode, or maybe the one before that. And it shows a couple of little scenes, nothing really big. He's sitting at a cubicle. He takes a phone call, and it's really just for dramatic irony or something, that the guy calls him Colonel, and it's just a nickname. It doesn't really make any sense, but the only reason that they throw it in there is kind of because for a second you're like, oh, he's a colonel, but you realize very briefly into this scene that he's really not a colonel, never was, or whatever. His boss is named Brandy, and he's a giant dick, kind of like Shannon, but a guy in the past. And he's a dick to him in multiple settings at work, which is really ridiculous. And John Locke kind of just takes it. He gives a little bit back to him in the lunchroom, yo, dude, this is my lunch. I should be able to play a freaking board game at lunch with a coworker. Just leave me alone, But the boss is a real real dick. Like he's like, oh, you have a woman in your life? I can't imagine you having a woman in your life. That's ridiculous. Like, like John is some awful human being that doesn't deserve to be loved or something. It doesn't really make sense. Like no one is that cruel. At least not without going to HR. I mean, John, come on, you got rights, buddy. Take him to HR. He's got to shut that shit down. At the end of the episode, we learn that, and one thing that was different about this episode is the way they do the flashbacks too. Like it starts off with him at the beach, and then it goes to actual like it's a flashback to him on the beach waking up, and then there's a flashback to, you know, his life, and the rest of his life is not the whole of his life or whatever, but these little scenes or whatever are intermixed, and they're flashed back before, obviously the beach thing. And then it kind of caps off with two scenes back to back, and one is him going to do the walkabout in Australia, which is the source of the title for the episode, Walkabout, and him getting rejected from the walkabout because it turns out this whole time he's in a wheelchair, and they've just been really creative about the way they show him. So you're like, oh my god, it's so shocking. He's in this wheelchair. But wait, he walks around on the island, and then it kind of like shows you him waking up on the island and being able to move and walk and feel his lower body, which was new for him. So it was a cool little shock thing for you, and we don't know why that happened. The next episode is White Rabbit, focusing on Jack. And it kind of shows like several scenes throughout his life, up to when he's like 12 maybe. The opening scene of the it's a cold open, and it's this young boy getting beat up, and then you realize it's Jack, and then the next scene he goes home and he's like visiting with his father, who's totally drinking a real tall whiskey in the middle of the afternoon, or something like that, and or early evening, something like that. And he's like, Jack, why are you bruised, and blah, blah, and you can't be a hero, and you shouldn't be everyone trying to save everyone, and it's really very much on the nose to what Jack has been doing all along. So, alright, I don't know. Jack clearly has this like lifelong hero complex that his father tried to dissuade him of, but was very unsuccessful in doing so. And then the episode also shows like Jack trying to track down his father in Australia, finding out that his father is dead. So, and it maybe even trying to bring, I think it also shows him trying to bring the father back by the airline that he's on. So, we have that to look forward to in the other part of, anyways. The sixth episode, Rising Sun, it focuses on Sun, most specifically, but it also shows her and Jin's relationship crescendo, kind of, and then like take a real nosedive. So you don't see them meeting, but you see like her at a dinner party, and he's like a waiter or something, and he comes over and gives her a flower, and they kiss, and they talk about how they can never really be together. And then there's another scene where he talked to her father, and he's agreed to marry him or let them marry if Jin comes to work with him for like 2-3 years or something like that, and he'll do it because he loves her, even though it's not the kind of work he wants to do. And then there's another scene where he gets her like this little puppy. It's like right after they first moved in together, and that's, as far as I can tell, that's only to establish that later the dog is much bigger, and that things are really like starting to go downhill with them. And I think that he comes in covered in blood, and she's like, "What's with all this blood? What's with all this blood?" And he's like, "I do whatever your father tells me to do." And there's no other explanation of what happens. Like, that could be her dad's blood. It could be her dad likes to watch him do something with blood. Who the fuck knows? There's no explanation. It's obvious. It's a fairly like, obvious allusion to like her father's some sort of mobster or dirty businessman who will, use violence as a tactic in some kind of way. Um, you're not really sure as to what that is. I do like to think that it's something sexual though, because I'm just creepy and that's funny. Just think about how funny that is. You have this guy working for you. He's married to your daughter. He's really indebted to you in a lot of different ways, and so you force him to like beat people up and bloody himself in front of you so you can, get off on it in some kind of weird way. I just think it's creepy. Why not? I'm a creepy dude, I guess. Holy shit, I didn't realize how creepy I was though. Was it? It's really playing in my head. Like at first it was just kind of a joke, and now it's really going, guys. All right, moving on. So current events. It's weird. Not like there's a lot of stuff that happens, but like not a lot really happens. So character moments, like the big one that I want to talk about is Shannon being a giant bitch again. Her and Boone get into an argument about how she sucks, and he's right because she does, and she does like she's like, no, I can survive, and he complains that they're out of food and how's she gonna get food and she's not gonna do anything, and she basically cons Charlie into getting her food, but it's almost like a fish. She gets Charlie, and then Charlie kind of ropes Hurley into helping him fish. Um, and it seems to only be to like kind of one up Boone, and she doesn't even care that Boone immediately outs her to Charlie about like him just using her. It was really strange to me, but whatever. Like I would think that like she'd want more fish out of it. I don't know. It there does seem to be this like habit of the show to establish a problem early in the episode and then kind of have it resolved by the end of the episode. And I didn't again. This wasn't something I really noticed in the first episode. In the first time I watched it, like 10 plus years ago, but I kind of have a problem with it now. It just seems weird. So episode 3, they're really trying to figure out what they're going to do for with the sorry, there were two things I guess in this one. One is water. It's not that they have it as a real problem, but they establish that they're trying to collect water from rain, which is a good idea, and I do like seeing that stuff in this. It adds an element of realism to it that you didn't otherwise see until shows like Lost came around. Um, and then the next thing was, or the main focus of that episode was that the air marshal or whatever, the marshal is dying, and it's really bringing everyone down on the island. Um, and like everyone is just basically like, why won't this guy die? Although the only person to really say that out loud is Shannon, the bitch, and Sawyer, the asshole, right? Sawyer, you almost even understand about it because he is willing to make sacrifices and also kind of mercy kill this guy. Although when he ends up doing that, it happens. He's really inept at doing it. You know what I mean? And so Jack has to go and finish the job for him. Um, I don't know. It wasn't like the episode was really cool in that it also had like little bits of dramatic irony. Like Jack finds out that Kate is the the prisoner, just as everyone else is like trusting her with a gun. You know what I mean? So like it just adds a little bit of dramatic irony there. It was a cool episode. The show is good. There's really good things about it. The next episode, Walkabout, really focused on the problem of food. So they established really early on that they're like running out of all the food, which they're talking about this being like day 4 or 5. That would have happened days earlier because airplanes don't really fly with much food. So it would have happened days earlier. But they don't have food. So Locke had found his collection of knives that he had traveled with and checked the bag of. And so he gives out a couple of knives to like Michael and Kate, and they go to hunt the boar. Michael is injured really early on in that. Kate tries to like hang this thing from Saeed to help triangulate the signal of the French woman's radio broadcast, and they also see that Locke encounters the monster in some kind of way, but you don't really see what happened there. And then later, Locke lies to Michael about it, saying he didn't see anything. And then we know that he lies because in another later point, he talks to Jack and he says, "I saw into the eyes of this island, and what I saw was beautiful." And that, kind of referring to the monster. But we don't know anything about it other than that. And also, like, we do know that he encounters it. We see Locke actually from the monster's perspective, and so, like, we know that they encountered each other in some kind of way, but we don't really know what happened. We don't know why Locke is spared, but like the pilot wasn't, and that kind of stuff. And I don't really remember if that particular question is answered ever in the show, but I hope it is. Locke, at the end of the third episode, has made a whistle, and he's able to call the dog, the little black boy's dog, and he gives that dog to Michael to return to his son to help him, kind of regain the trust of his child. And I just thought that was a nice moment for Locke. He seems like a weird character. You don't really know what to do about him. You're on the fence as to whether or not he's trustable or likable or all that kind of stuff. But he does this really great thing, and I liked that. And then another thing I wanted to talk about was, I think in the third episode, yes, it was in the third episode. So while Michael is trying to find the dog before all that happened, he's like running. He gets chased by the monster or something. He gets chased by something. He's not really sure what it is, and he ends up running into Sun. Sun is topless for like no real reason, and he sees her topless. In the next episode, when he goes for the boar hunting, he leaves his son, S-O-N, with Sun, S-U-N. I guess those boobs must have been real nice, because she can't speak English as far as anybody knows. And, like, there's a language barrier between her son, his son, and her son, and him. So he doesn't even really know that they've, like, established that she's really going to take care of his son. He might have said, God, I'm getting really pronoun confused here. Son might have said, like, I don't want nothing to do with kids. I don't have any experience with kids. I have a dog. Leave me alone with this freaking kid. She might have said that. But he was just like, you're going to watch my kid. Cool. All right. I mean, there's only 30 plus other survivors you could have let your kid stay with that actually speak the language your kid is doing and understand that they're to watch him. But you choose this girl because she's got nice ass boobies. Good decision making. All right. Moving right along. Jack starts to have these hallucinations because he's not sleeping, supposedly. Right? We're not really sure why that's happening or whatever, but he's having visual and possibly auditory hallucinations, which are really super rare, unless you're talking about drug-induced stuff. Visual hallucinations are maybe a little bit... Yeah, no, they're less common than auditory hallucinations, and auditory hallucinations are way less common than like tactile ones. Like, you're much more likely to feel hallucination, like as if someone were grabbing you, than if someone, just you. I hope you followed that. I know it wasn't that clear. Seeing something that isn't there, really uncommon. Hearing something that isn't there is more common, but still super uncommon. But actually having like a tactile hallucination as if something touched you, that actually happens all the time. People have that shit all the time. It's kind of why people like feel like someone's watching them. You ever have that feeling? I'm watching you right now. Turn around. Oop! I'm not really there. That was spooky. So, he follows the hallucinations, his white rabbit, to these caves that also happen to have a spring water well there or something like that. So he brings water to everyone. They, the next day, they all go looking. He brings a bunch of people up for water, and then they basically decide to make a permanent residence in this cave. It's defendable. It has a clean and clear water supply. So several of the survivors are going to set up shop in the cave. And he's actually hoping that all of them do. But as soon as this idea is presented to Saeed, as for instance, Saeed's like, "No way, you're crazy. We need to keep on the beach. Like, what if there's a boat or a plane? They'll never see us in these freaking caves, or through you'd have to go through like hundreds of feet or maybe a mile. It's not really clear as to how far the caves are inland before you'd see anyone, and it's dense forestry in between there. So." So the group divides, and some people stay on the beach, and some people go to the caves. So we're going to see, I guess, where that goes in the next episodes or whatever. I'm sure that I've missed a couple of main things, and I'll try and, if I think of anything in between now and the next video, I will definitely talk about them in the next video. But I would, again, expect the next video Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. So, that's pretty much it. I'm glad we had a good time, guys. I hope you are enjoying watching me and watching Lost with me. If you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the comments below or hit me up on Facebook, and we will talk it out. All right. See you next week. 4 episodes.